She thought it was a robbery. The millionaire CEO mistook her for an Uber and ended up finding love. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us from which city you're watching. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. "You must be kidding," muttered Derek Stone, checking his watch for the 4th time in less than 2 minutes. It was his first experience using Uber, and, to his impatience, the driver was already late. His Mercedes had broken down that morning, and with no other option, he had to use the app. That's when a silver Toyota, just like the one on the app, stopped at the light right next to him. He didn't think twice. He opened the door, tossed his briefcase in the back seat, and got in like a general heading to battle. "Go. Just go," he ordered without even looking at the driver's face. "What?" said a woman's voice, a little husky and completely shocked. "Come on, lady. Just drive," he replied, typing on his phone. The driver's eyes widened. Her face went pale, and in pure panic, she slammed on the gas. "Oh my God, I want to live," she screamed, gripping the wheel with both hands as if she were fleeing for her life. Derek dropped his phone. Hey, why are you screaming like that?" "Because you're robbing me, you lunatic," she cried, glancing at him through the mirror. "I just stopped at the light. Help." "Oh God, I'm wet," he shouted, now panicking too. "I'm not robbing you. Aren't you my Uber?" "Uber? I work in an office." "Then why did you stop in front of the coffee shop like a rideshare car?" "Because there was a red light." "Oh, for heaven's sake." She pulled the car over to the shoulder with a jolt that almost made Derek choke on his own shout. They stared at each other in silence for 3 seconds. The engine was still roaring. Embarrassment filled the air. "All right," he finally said with a sigh. "That was confusing." "Confusing? You barged into my car, told me to just go, and almost gave me a heart attack. I nearly called the police." Derek scratched the back of his neck, trying to stay composed. The truth was, now that the adrenaline was fading, he realized just how funny the whole thing was. "Okay, it was a mistake." He smiled. "A misunderstanding." "All right. A misunderstanding that could have ended in a lawsuit. And believe me, I know how these things work. I work in a law office." He froze. "Really? Really? You're lucky I don't carry a weapon." Derek laughed. "You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I was running late, saw the car, thought it was my Uber, and jumped in without thinking. It was an impulse." He paused. "But since you work at an office and seem to be heading downtown, would you mind giving me a ride?" At this point, the Uber has probably canceled anyway. Emily huffed, still upset. But there was something in his expression, or maybe in the absurdity of the situation, that made her give in. "Fine, but only because you look like a lost fool." "I may be lost, but I'm not a fool. I'm Derek." He extended his hand. "I'm Emily, and let's be clear, if you try anything suspicious, I'll crash this car into a pole. I've already been traumatized. Enough for today." During the ride, they teased each other. Emily explained she was late because her sister had turned off her alarm. Derek mentioned he hated public transportation. She called it rich people drama. He called her lightning driver. They laughed. They complained about traffic. And for a brief moment, they forgot the madness that had started their morning. When they reached the tall, mirrored building of Weston and Braw Law, Derek pointed. "Here it is. The firm where I work." "Really?" Emily stopped the car smoothly. "I work here, too." His eyes widened. "You've got to be kidding." "No, I'm George's assistant. He works on the 8th floor. I'm a partner, and I've never seen you there." "Well, I've never seen a lawyer jump into random cars in the middle of the street either. And yet, here we are." Derek looked at her for a moment, intrigued. Emily H. "Thank you for the ride and for the near-death experience. It was unforgettable." She laughed. "Thank me by buying me a coffee sometime, but next time you better get into the right car." He got out, and as he climbed the steps to the entrance, he couldn't resist looking back. Emily was still in the car, laughing to herself. He smiled. "Definitely unforgettable." Derek spent the entire morning trying to focus on the contracts on his desk, but his mind kept drifting back to that brown-haired woman who had almost scared him to death and to laughter just a few hours earlier. Every time he thought about her terrified face, yelling, "I want to live," he let out a quiet chuckle that made his secretary, Martha, raise a concerned eyebrow. Mr. Stone, Martha, appeared at the door for the third time. "Are you all right? Do you need anything?" "I'm great, Martha. Better than ever, actually." She looked at him as if he had completely lost his mind and walked away, shaking her head. Derek didn't care. He was far too curious to know more about Emily, George's assistant, who drove like she was in a police chase and had the sharpest tongue he'd come across in years. When lunchtime came, Derek decided to take a walk through the hallways before heading out. Pure coincidence, of course. It had absolutely nothing to do with the chance of running into Emily again. Absolutely nothing. Walking down the 8th floor. Also a coincidence since Jorge worked there. Derek heard a familiar laugh echoing down the hall. He slowed his pace and saw Emily at the center of a small group of employees, gesturing animatedly as she told a story. "So I said to the client, 'Sir, you want to see your neighbor because her cat pooped in your yard? Fine, but just know you'll be known as the cat poop lawsuit guy for the next 5 years. Emily mimicked a deep, pompous voice. He gave up right then. The group burst out laughing. Derek hid behind a column watching in fascination. Emily was naturally funny, spontaneous, and held everyone's attention without even trying. Nothing about her was forced or calculated. The complete opposite of the people he usually spent time with, who measured every word as if they were in a business meeting. "Emily, you're terrible," laughed Sandra from accounting. "Poor man. Poor nothing." Emily rolled her eyes. "You didn't see the size of the fence he wanted to build just because of a cat. Looked like he was preparing for an alien invasion." Derek couldn't help it and let out a loud laugh. Everyone turned to look at him. Emily's eyes widened when she saw him. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, crossing her arms with a mischievous smile. "The man who breaks into other people's cars." "Hey, that was a misunderstanding," Derek said as he walked closer, trying to seem casual. "And from what I've heard, you've got way more embarrassing stories than I do." "My God," in the car. The group watched their back and forth like it was a tennis match. Sandra whispered something to the colleague beside her, who covered her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. "Oh sure." Emily pretended to be offended. "It's my fault for driving my own car. It's your fault for speeding like you were in Formula One." I sped up. Emily gave him a once-over, eyeing his perfectly tailored suit. Well-dressed. Maybe, but still suspicious. The group laughed again, and Derek felt a strange satisfaction at managing to get that smile out of her. Emily had a unique way of teasing. Direct but not cruel. Smart but not arrogant. And she definitely didn't treat him with the usual reverence he got from other employees at the firm. "All right, I'm going to lunch," Emily announced, grabbing her purse before another lost lawyer decides to kidnap me. She walked past Derek, giving him a playful nudge on the arm. "Try not to get into the wrong car again, okay?" And she headed down the hall, leaving Derek standing there with a goofy smile on his face. What he didn't notice was Schwar, watching the whole scene from the other end of the corridor, leaning against his office door frame. He had caught every glance, every laugh, every second of that exchange. And he didn't like what he saw, especially the spark in Derek's eyes when he looked at Emily. Shores knew that look. He had seen it before in meetings. Whenever Derek set his sights on an important case or a promotion he wanted, it was the look of someone who had found his next goal. And that was a problem because Jorge had feelings for Emily. Feelings he never had the courage to express. But that grew quietly each day they worked together. With every laugh of hers, every moment she showed her sharp intelligence and contagious good humor. "Mr. Jorge." Emily appeared next to him, coming back from the elevator. "I forgot my wallet. Are you all right? You look worried." "I'm fine, Emily." He forced a smile. Just thinking about the afternoon. Cases. Oh, the construction company lawsuit. I sorted all the documents you asked for. They're on your desk, organized by date. Perfect as always. Emily smiled and stepped into the office to grab her wallet. Emily, he said, moving closer. When you get back from lunch, can we review the Patton Associates contracts? Something urgent came up. Of course, Mr. Horge, she answered right away. Anything you need. When Emily walked out of the room with you by her side, Derek was standing in the hallway talking with another lawyer. Good lunch, Emily, Derek said with a smile that never reached his eyes. He nodded. Derek, poor, replied in the same tone. Emily looked from one to the other, feeling a strange tension in the air, but not quite able to tell what it was. Well, I'll be going then. See you later. She stepped away, leaving the two men staring at each other. Derek was the first to break the silence. George, I hope there's no problem with me talking to Emily. Problem? George adjusted his glasses. Why would there be a problem with you talking to my assistant? The emphasis on the word "my" was subtle, but Derek caught it right away. No particular reason. I just wanted to be sure we're all professional here. We've always been, Derek. Always. The two parted, each heading in a different direction down the hallway, but both knew something had shifted that morning. Derek kept coming up with excuses to pass by the 8th floor for the rest of the week. He needed to check some files in the legal department. He wanted to speak with the research staff. He had forgotten to sign some documents. Emily, for her part, started to notice the pattern. And as much as she tried to deny it, she found it amusing how Derek tried to look casual when it was obvious he was going out of his way to bump into her. You again around here? She asked on Thursday when she saw him checking some files very close to her desk. I have the right to walk around my own firm, don't I? You do, but usually partners don't need to walk around the same hallway 5 times a day. Derek pretended to be offended. 5 times. It was at most 3. It was 7. I counted. He laughed. Defeated. Fine. You caught me. Derek Stone. Emily stood up and crossed her arms. You're arrogant, inconvenient, and clearly have nothing better to do. Derek waited for the but. There was always a but when someone started a sentence like that. But, she continued, and he smiled. You're also funny, and I've kind of gotten used to your mysterious appearances. Kind of gotten used to me. Don't let it go to your head. From then on, the teasing between them became part of the routine. Derek would show up with some flimsy excuse to be on the 8th floor. Emily answered with sharp remarks about his dedication to work. He called her kamikaze driver. She called him lost partner. And Gore watched it all, feeling the knot in his stomach tighten with every shared laugh, every lingering glance. Every moment he noticed Derek managing to make Emily smile in a way he never had. The atmosphere on the 8th floor was definitely heating up, and everyone knew something was about to happen. The following Monday, Derek decided he had wasted enough time with excuses. It was time for a more direct approach. After all, he was Derek Stone. When he wanted something, he got it. And what he wanted now was Emily working for him. At least that's what he told himself. He found Emily in the break room making a coffee that smelled far too good to be the kind the firm provided. Good morning, Emily. Special coffee today? Good morning, Derek, she answered without looking at him. Interesting. Have you always been this detail-oriented? Emily finally looked at him, suspicious. Derek Stone making small talk about coffee in the break room. That's new. What do you want? He laughed. He had to admit he liked how direct she was. I want to make you an offer. If it's for more driving lessons, the answer is no. As my personal assistant. Emily almost dropped her cup. What? You heard me. Personal assistant. Double your current salary. Better benefits, access to more important cases, a real career. Emily stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to figure out whether he was serious or if this was some kind of elaborate joke. Derek, did you hit your head when you got out of my car? I'm serious, Emily. Double the salary. Triple it and it would still be no. Derek blinked, surprised. Triple? Not everyone gets an offer like that. And not everyone turns it down. Emily crossed her arms. But I am. Why? It's an incredible opportunity because I'm loyal to Gore. He gave me a chance when no one else would. He taught me everything I know about corporate law. He treated me with respect from day one. I can treat you with respect, too, Derek. Emily sighed. You're offering me money to abandon my boss. That's not respect. That's just fancy bribery. It's not bribery. It's business. Maybe for you. For me, it's about character. Derek felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Admiration, frustration. Maybe both. Emily, you're passing up a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm passing up the chance to become the kind of person who betrays someone who trusts her just for money. And you know what? I'm glad to miss out on that. That was when Jorge appeared in the doorway of the break room. From the look on his face, it was obvious he had overheard at least part of the conversation. Derek. Horace's voice was controlled, but there was a coldness Emily had never heard before. May I have a word with you? Emily looked from one to the other, feeling the tension in the air. I'll go back to my desk, she murmured, grabbing her coffee and leaving quickly. The two men were left alone in the break room. Hor closed the door, so Hor adjusted his glasses, a habit Emily knew as a sign of nervousness. Stealing employees now. Stealing is a strong word, Hor. I'd say I'm offering opportunities. Opportunities, repeated with a smile that never reached his eyes. How considerate of you to think about Emily's professional development. She's talented. She deserves more than just organizing your files. My files? Hor's voice rose. Derek, Emily is not just organizing files. She drafts contracts, does complex legal research, meets with clients. She's learning more with me in a year than she would in 5 years as your personal assistant. Being a partner's personal assistant is a very respected position. A personal assistant who fetches coffee and schedules meetings. Please, Derek, we both know what you're doing. Derek straightened, sensing the challenge in Hor's voice. And what exactly am I doing trying to impress a woman with your money and your position? The silence that followed was heavy. Derek narrowed his eyes. You're getting involved in matters that are none of your business. Emily has worked for me for 2 years. Her matters are my matters for now. What do you mean for now? Derek smiled, but it was a cold smile. I just said things can change. People change their minds, especially when they realize they're limiting their own possibilities. Horse took a step forward. Derek, I'll say this only once. Leave Emily alone or what? Or you'll find out that not everyone in this firm is impressed by your last name in your bank account. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. Horse, you're forgetting who you're talking to. I'm talking to someone who is trying to use power and money to get what he zero wants, and that Derek doesn't impress me one bit. Good to know because I'm not trying to impress you. They stared at each other for a few more seconds. Oya was the first to move, opening the break room door. This conversation is over. Yes, Derek agreed, adjusting his tie. It's over. But both knew the conversation was only just beginning. In the days that followed, the tension in the office became tangible. Employees noticed that Hor and Derek, who used to keep a cordial professional relationship, now barely greeted each other in the hallways. Derek kept showing up on the 8th floor, but now his visits had a less subtle purpose. He praised Emily's work out loud, mentioned interesting cases coming up in his department, and always found a way to make it clear his offer was still on the table. Emily, he said on a Wednesday, walking by her desk, that report on corporate mergers you did last week was excellent, very insightful. Thank you, she replied without looking up from the documents. You have a natural talent for strategic analysis. It's rare to find someone with your business intuition. Emily finally looked at him. Derek, you're doing this on purpose. Doing what? Being, I don't know, complimentary. You were never like this before. Maybe I was just slow to realize how good you were at what you do. Or maybe you're trying to convince me to accept your offer by using a different strategy. Derek smiled. You know me well. I know enough to know you don't give up easily. That's an admirable quality in a lawyer. It can be admirable. Emily leaned back in her chair. But it can. Also, leaving his office, had witnessed the whole exchange. He walked over to Emily's desk with a serious expression. Emily, I need you to review the Henderson Incorporated contracts. There are some clauses that need to be rewritten. Of course, Mr. Hoare. I'll do it now. Derek watched the exchange, noticing how Emily immediately gave Jorge her full attention, how she treated him with a genuine respect that went beyond professional hierarchy. And that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Well, Derek clapped his hand softly. I'll let you two get back to work. Emily, if you change your mind about my offer, I won't. She cut him off, though not rudely. You never know. Derek winked and walked away. George waited until Derek was out of sight before speaking. Emily, I hope you. No, you don't have to be polite to him if you don't want to. I know, Mr. Shore, but being rude won't fix anything. And honestly, I think he'll get bored soon and move on to something else. George seriously doubted that. He had known Derek for years, and he knew that once Derek set a goal, he longer knew if Derek's goal was to win Emily over as an employee or as something more, and that uncertainty was starting to cost him sleep. As the week went by, other employees began commenting on the Cold War between the two lawyers. Sandra from accounting bet with her colleague in HR that something would explode by Friday. Martha, Derek's secretary, mentioned to the receptionist that she had never seen her boss so focused on one project. And Emily tried to keep things normal, but she was beginning to realize she had become the center of a dispute she hadn't asked for and didn't know how to handle. What she didn't know was that Derek had already decided on his next strategy, and Shore was preparing his defense. The war of kindness began, steaming with a little note for the best legal assistant in Manhattan. DS. She looked around for Derek, but he was somewhere pretending he had nothing to do with it. Fancy, Sandra murmured as she passed by her desk. Someone's trying to impress you. 15 minutes later, Jorge showed up with a box of donuts from Emily's favorite bakery. The small, cozy one 2 blocks from the office. Thought you might want something sweet to go with the coffee, he said, placing the box on her desk with a smile that was trying to look casual. Emily looked at the expensive coffee, then at the homemade style donuts, and finally at Chore. Mr. Hoare, you didn't have to. Of course I did. You work hard and deserve to be spoiled once in a while. Derek, who just happened to be walking by at that exact moment, stopped and watched the scene. His eyes narrowed as he saw Emily smiling at you while choosing a donut. On Wednesday, it was the printer's turn. Emily was struggling with a stubborn machine that refused to print an important contract when Derek appeared out of nowhere like some kind of tech superhero. Printer problems? He asked, already rolling up his sleeves as if he were about to perform surgery. It's making this weird noise and won't print anything, Emily explained, frustrated. Derek pressed a few buttons, opened and closed a few trays, and miraculously the printer came back to life. There you go, he said with a victorious smile. It just needed a man's touch. Wow, thank you. How did you know what to do? I have my hidden talents. What Emily didn't know was that Derek had broken the printer on purpose the night before, staying late at the office to program a small error into the system that only he would know how to fix. Jorge, watching from his office doorway, frowned. On Thursday, when Emily mentioned she needed to make several copies for a meeting, he showed up with a technician who just happened to be around to do preventive maintenance on all the printers on the floor. What an amazing coincidence, Derek said sarcastically to Martha. George brought in a technician the very day Emily needed the printer. Do you think he did it on purpose? Martha asked, intrigued. Martha, in this office, nothing is a coincidence. By Friday, the competition had escalated to an entirely new level. Derek started by praising Emily's report during a department-wide meeting, calling out her brilliant analysis and fresh perspective for everyone in the legal team to hear. Jorge hit back by inviting Emily to join a meeting with important clients, introducing her as my most talented and insightful assistant. Emily suddenly found herself being passed back and forth like a trophy, praised, consulted, and included in discussions that normally weren't part of her responsibilities. "This is getting ridiculous," she murmured to Sandra over lunch. "They're acting like two peacocks in mating season. You're complaining about getting all that attention." Sandra laughed. "Half the women in this office would kill to be in your place." "It's not real attention, Sandra. It's strategy. They're using me as part of a game I don't fully understand." "Oh, Emily, you do understand. You just don't want to admit it." Emily sighed. Sandra was right. She knew exactly what was happening. And as much as she tried to pretend it was only about work, there was more to it. The way Derek looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way Jorge lit up whenever she laughed at one of his jokes. The situation came to a head the following Monday when a relatively simple real estate case turned into a legal headache. The client, Mr. Henriksen, had bought a commercial building and later discovered there was an unrecorded easement allowing the neighbor to use part of the parking lot. The seller had forgotten to mention that little detail. He was in the conference room surrounded by stacks of documents, clearly frustrated. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, taking off his glasses to rub his eyes. "The paperwork is all over the place. I can't find the legal basis to challenge the easement." Emily, who was organizing the files, paused and watched Jorge for a moment. 0. Then she glanced at the documents scattered on the table. "Mr. Jorge, may I take a look?" "Of course, Emily. Maybe you'll see something I don't." Emily stepped closer to the table and began examining the papers. After a few minutes of focused silence, her eyes lit up. "Mr. Jorge, did you check the date of the original easement?" "Of course, it's here. 1987, and when was the last land survey done?" Jorge searched through the documents. "Why?" "Because if we look at this 1995 map and compare it with the description of the 1987 easement," Emily placed two documents side by side. "The area described in the easement no longer exists. It was changed during the 1995 renovation." Jorge looked at the documents, then at Emily, then back at the documents. "Emily, are you saying that?" "I'm saying the easement refers to a space that was physically altered, making it technically invalid. Mr. Henriksen can challenge it based on the physical impossibility of fulfilling the original terms." Jorge was silent for a long moment, then began to smile. "Emily, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Do you think it could work?" "Could it work? It'll solve the entire case." Gorge stood up and on impulse hugged Emily. It was quick, professional, but Emily felt something different in it. An admiration that went beyond respect for her work. 26:56. On the other side of the conference room glass, Derek was watching the whole scene. He saw the moment of discovery. Saw Jorge hug Emily, saw the genuine happiness in both their eyes, and he felt a stab of jealousy that surprised him with its intensity. It wasn't just professional jealousy. It was something more personal, more primal. Derek realized with uncomfortable clarity that he didn't just want Emily working for him. He wanted Emily. Period. In the days that followed, Emily's name began circulating through the halls with a new kind of respect. The assistant who saved the Henriksen case, the young woman ya always praises the girl with an eye for detail. Emily felt the change. People greeted her differently. Other lawyers stopped to ask her opinion on cases. She was no longer just YJ's assistant. She was becoming Emily, the talented assistant. But with recognition also came greater pressure. Derek stepped up his attempts to impress her, showing up with invitations to major legal events and mentioning unique opportunities coming. Over her reading glasses, suspicious. "My career is going just fine. Thank you. I know. That's exactly why I want to talk. There are some opportunities coming up that might interest you." Derek, we've already had this conversation, not about working for me, he interrupted quickly. About your future, your potential. Things that go beyond this firm. Emily hesitated. As much as she distrusted Derek's intentions, she had to admit. She was curious. Fine, she sighed. But I picked the place. Perfect. Anywhere you want. Marino's. That little Italian place on 47th Street. Derek blinked. Surprised. He had expected her to pick the usual food truck. Marino's is a lot. More sop? Derek. It means I'm on a budget. 30 minutes later, they were sitting at a cozy table at Marino's, a small and welcoming Italian restaurant. Derek had never noticed, even though he passed by every day. So, Emily placed her napkin on her lap. What's this mysterious talk about my career? Derek took a sip of wine and straightened zero. But I get the feeling you're underestimating yourself. What do you mean? You're fine with staying in the position of assistant when you're clearly capable of much more. I'm not talking about coming to work for me. He raised his hand before she could protest. I'm talking about you recognizing your own value. Emily studied him carefully. And what exactly do you think I should do? For start 30:45, stop settling for crumbs. You deserve a seat, not to be serving coffee to the people sit. Emily was about to answer when a familiar voice sounded behind her. Emily, what an incredible coincidence. She turned and saw Jorge approaching with a smile that didn't quite hide the unpleasant surprise of finding them there. Mr. Hor, what are you doing here? Last-minute meeting with a client. It ended earlier than expected. Hor looked at Derek with icy courtesy. Derek, good to see you here. Jorge. Derek returned, the greeting in the same tone. Join us. We were having a very interesting conversation about professional development. Jorge didn't wait for a second invitation. He pulled up a chair and sat down, creating a triangle of tension. Emily could almost touch. Professional development, Jorge smiled. Add Emily. What a fascinating topic. Emily has so much potential, doesn't she, Derek? Exactly what saying, Derek replied, cutting into his pasta with more force than necessary. Emily deserves recognition for her exceptional talent. I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm considering recommending her for a promotion. Derek stopped chewing. Promotion to senior legal assistant with a substantial raise and more responsibilities. Emily looked from one to the other, realizing she had become the prize in a competition happening right in front of her. Guys, she interrupted. You do know I'm sitting right here, don't you? You can stop talking about me like I'm some kind of project. You're right. Derek smiled, though his eyes stayed on Jorge. Sorry, Emily. I just get excited when I see talent being wasted. Wasted? George adjusted his glasses dangerously. Emily is learning more with me in 2 years than she would in 5 years in the corporate department. Interesting perspective, Derek countered. Although I'd say diverse experience is always better for professional development. Diverse like fetching coffee and scheduling meetings. Diverse like participating in multi-million-dollar negotiations and international mergers. Emily watched the exchange like it was a verbal tennis match. She decided to step in before one of them ended up with a fork in the eye. Since you're both so interested in my professional development, she said calmly, cutting into her own plate, maybe you should know that I'll be graduating from law school in just 2 months. Total silence. Derek dropped his fork. Hor nearly choked on his wine. What? Derek was the first to recover. Law evening. Program NYU. I graduate in 2 months. Emily kept eating as if she just commented on the weather. I thought you both knew. Emily Jorge leaned forward. You never mentioned. They never asked. You all just assumed I was only an assistant with no ambitions of my own. Derek looked at her with a mix of admiration and something else Emily couldn't quite identify. You're going to be a lawyer. I'm going to try. I need to pass the bar exam, but yes, that's the plan, Emily. Jorge cleared his throat, suddenly looking nervous. This changes everything. I always knew you were special, but now he